What's going on, everybody? It is Friday. I almost said Saturday night. Friday night post game show here on the YouTube channel. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate the support, and man, we have a lot to talk about. I don't want to say I can't believe that just happened, kind of a deal, but wow, that was super ugly. Ducks getting absolutely destroyed in the Pac-12 championship, 38-10 final from Las Vegas. And wow, there is just so much, to dive into here, from the on-field product to the Cristobal reports about the job at Miami. And, that's probably, I don't know. Do you want to start with the game, or I feel like the Cristobal and Miami stuff is pretty big. Where are you at?
Honestly, I think the Cristobal thing is probably going to be what most people are talking about, just based on the pregame show we did, how a lot of people were asking about that. And based on what I've seen from Twitter since the game's been over and all day, I think that's probably a good place to start.
Okay. Yeah. So I just got a story up on Ducks Digest, focusing on what Mario's comments were about the opening, or the last. We don't have an opening at Miami. That's what makes this such a unique situation, right? He was asked right out the gate about the opening, the job at Miami, and would you sign a contract extension at Oregon, or would you accept the Miami job if offered? And I have some quotations here. He said, "I haven't talked to anybody, so let's not create narratives as we sit here in this press conference. Oregon is working on some stuff for me, and that's what I have right now, and that's the extent of that conversation." So there were two or three more questions about the job and the reports that followed that question. And he was asked about, do you about players, seeing those reports, and do you think that had them distracted? And as you would expect, I mean, everything was pretty much deflected from there. So, I mean, now that we're just kind of moving forward here, obviously there's plenty of stuff to follow. There's going to be a lot of things that we're going to have to keep an eye on. Just the coaching carousel in general. Obviously, we have a whole college football slate of the remaining conference championship games tomorrow. But it was basically deflection. I mean, we didn't really get a whole lot out of the press conference, and I mean, that's about what we've come to expect with this.
I mean, I can't really, say I told you so, because it's not like people are going to, ask questions and expect Mario Cristobal to say, "Yep, I'm out of here. I'm going to Miami."
Yeah.
I honestly, I don't know why you ask him what was it, 4 questions right out of the gate about his future, the job at Miami that doesn't even exist yet, which it probably will. Manny Diaz has been very underwhelming at Miami so far, but yeah, like you said, it's not an opening yet. There's no guarantee that they let him go. They still need an athletic director. Sounds like there's a couple people in the mix. Clemson's athletic director, there's been reports whether or not he would come on down to Miami. So nobody knows that part yet, but Manny Diaz is still there. There's no opening there yet. So there's no guarantee that Mario Cristobal is up and out of here. Even if that job is open, and Manny Diaz is gone, there's no guarantee that Cristobal's gone. And I think I said it in the pregame, he doesn't seem to me like the kind of guy that would pull, a Lincoln Riley and say, I'm staying here, and they completely, jump ship. I don't get those vibes from him. Now, granted, I'm not, I'm not in the team room. I'm not in the locker room. I don't know what goes through his head, but, yeah, it's just a lot right now for him with his mom being sick in Miami, and obviously it's his alma mater, a place where he grew up and was raised. So it's a lot, but yeah, I did say that I wouldn't take these concerns with the Miami rumors. I wouldn't say they're valid at the time. Now things have changed, and they seem a little more. There's a little more juice to that train right now.
Yeah, that's definitely the tone that I kind of feel is kind of surrounding the whole concept of it right now, right? With all these other reports coming out, and that's the kind of weird thing about it, right? Is they're just reports until you see something of more substance, maybe looking a little bit more legitimate. So I mean, really, if you think about it, the new information that we got wasn't really even that new. It was just Miami's going to make a run at Cristobal. That was the biggest thing. And then following that, there were some other reports coming out about Oregon working on a new contract for Mario and looking like it's going to be a pretty lucrative deal that they're gonna offer him. And he confirmed as much as far as the contract goes, more or less, in the post game, saying, "Hey, all I know right now is that that Oregon's working on something for me, and that's kind of where we stay at that." Or where they stand right now as far as that goes. He's definitely earned himself some of the incentives, I believe, on his current contract, just with how they've played this year, securing the Pac-12 North, and then also I believe something about a 10-win season, and then, getting into a bowl game. Those are some of the other incentives that are kind of here right now, but it is so weird that this is all happening with Manny Diaz still the acting head coach at Miami. So I think, let's see. We did have one question that I want to get to. So we can throw it up here and kind of see how the discussion goes. Like you said, Dylan, that was obviously a big topic that's on everyone's mind right now. So if you guys have any more questions, for sure, throw them in the comments, or if you're watching on the replay, like I said earlier, tell me what you're thinking about these, coaching reports with Miami and thoughts on the loss to Utah and what the future of the program looks like right now. Here we go. Question coming from Trello. Thanks for the question. If Cristobal leaves, who are some good replacements? This is obviously a big topic that a lot of people are thinking about, and I'm going to be upfront saying that I need to do more research on this. But I think, two names that kind of come to mind are Ludical at Cincinnati and Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. I mean, I think with Fickell, obviously you see what he's built at Cincinnati, and I know that they're starting to get some buzz on the recruiting trail. They got Mario Eugenio, big defensive lineman out of Florida the other day, so there's some momentum there. And then just the fact that he has this program really on the cusp of going to their first playoff is pretty huge and notable about what he's done there. And then you look at Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, it really feels like the perfect fit in Ole Miss. So, I'm sure other schools are going to come after him, but who knows if there's even really any juice to that with him coming over. But he's just he knows. I feel like you have to get a guy that's offensive focused, just with how that's been a struggle of late. And Kiffin clearly knows how to put together an offense. He'll be able to get you'll surely be able to get some guys, some good quarterbacks. So, those are kind of just some early names that I think we could throw out there. But obviously, this is going to be a huge storyline to track, and I'm sure we'll be digging into some more potential candidates should that become the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to lie. I need to do more research too, and I'll tell you why. I didn't think we'd get to this point. I didn't think we'd have all these reports on game day of the Pac-12 championship, just 4 or 5 hours before game time. So, it wasn't something I was like, oh, well, Mario Cristobal's gone. Might as well look at who's, in the running to replace him. Like, that never passed my mind. So, but now that we're in this situation, and it's, I don't want to say a possibility, but obviously the speculation's there. I think Lane Kiffin would probably be my front runner. Now, granted, I don't see him leaving Ole Miss, let alone the SEC even. He spent a lot of time in the SEC throughout his career. So I don't know if he would necessarily go west to Oregon. I feel like if he was to go to west, I think the only team that he would probably want to go to would be Oregon. But I do think that, like you said, I would prefer to have an offensive-minded coach as well if I was Oregon and, and Rob Mullins making this decision. It's kind of crazy to think about, another coaching search for Oregon, and then the offensive coordinator. If Joe Moorhead's gone too, you have to go through that as well. So it's insane because Oregon was at one point number 2, number 3 in the country. They beat Ohio State, looked like a playoff lock. And now you're talking about, everybody's talking about potentially losing your head coach and your offensive coordinator in the same offseason. It's crazy how the tables have turned.
Yeah, and that's another part that I think, I don't want to say it got swept under the rug, but I feel like I was so focused on the Cristobal reports that we got to figure out what's going on with Joe Moorhead, because, that'll obviously, I'm not saying that'll directly impact Cristobal's decision or not. He's going to make his own decision for himself, but that's another chunk of news that we kind of still have to see what's going on there. So, yeah, cool. Good first question to start with. let's see. We got some more here. Gosh, I want to make sure I track all these right. Okay. Let's see. Shoot, sorry, it's taking me so long. Okay. This question coming from Matthew. There we go. Get on the screen there. Matthew, thanks for your question. Given KT being out most of the last quarter, do you think he's done for the year? Yeah, I'd say it's probably pretty likely. I mean, we can speculate all we want, but it looks like he did post something on his Instagram that I think would, support that. He posted, let's see if it's still there on his story. I'm scrolling through it right now. Him committing. It was pictures of him committing. Screenshots from the ESPN and announcement, and then a picture of him, and he just said the end of an era. So actually, let me see if I can share my screen here. This will be super nifty. Let's see. Hold on. Bear with me. All right. Is this showing up here? Aha, there we go. Yep. Okay, yeah. So this is Kavon Thibodeau's Instagram story right now. Just to show you guys what we were seeing there. So this is before the game, and then this 7 minutes ago. It's 10:26 on the West Coast, and then his commitment. You see that, and then the end of an era. So we'll wait for a formal announcement, but players are obviously all over social media, so do with that what you will. But I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? I mean, that you think about the team's playoff aspirations, and then once they lost to Utah the first time, it was kind of taken down a notch, and then it kind of became Rose Bowl, and now the Rose Bowl is not even a possibility, and it looks like they're probably going to be headed for the Alamo Bowl. So, but especially with a guy like Kavon, you think it makes a lot of sense when you're in consideration for the top overall pick in the draft to potentially opt out of the bowl game if we get to that point.
That's definitely been a growing trend the last half decade or so, with a lot of top prospects, ditching the bowl game, the lesser bowl games to prepare for the NFL. I definitely wouldn't be surprised. I'm reacting to the KT Instagram story for the first time. I hadn't even seen that. So the end of an era thing, I mean, I think that's pretty clear cut right there. And the pictures of his recruitment, just you can kind of tell what he's thinking right now, just kind of going through all the motions, thinking about everything he's gone through since committing to Oregon, and obviously not being able to compete for a second Rose Bowl and a national championship. It's definitely, I'm sure, on his mind right now. But I think in the NFL, in terms of the NFL and his stock, I think he's proven the kind of NFL player that he can be. I think he's done enough to solidify himself as, the number one overall pick, easily a top 5, top 3 pick. But in my mind, I think he's the number 1 pick in the NFL. But yeah, it's definitely tough for Oregon to not be able to have him as they go against probably either Oklahoma or Baylor in the Big 12. Whoever probably loses the Big 12 championship game, or Oklahoma if Oklahoma State or if Baylor wins. So yeah, that's going to be tough against, a couple really good offenses that they might face.
I mean, Dylan, you bring that up. Can we just take a minute and just kind of appreciate the fact that we depending on what happens with tomorrow's slate, we could see so much chaos. Imagine if Bama wins, imagine if Baylor wins or Oklahoma State wins. I feel like Oklahoma State's kind of a shoo-in right now. That's kind of what they're being viewed as if they can win. But Notre Dame could potentially get in, or I don't know. Who knows? Maybe they get left out of it because they're not playing this week. They don't have a conference championship game to play in. So, obviously there's a lot of different things that could happen. Scenarios and hypotheticals and all that. But because this game's on a Friday, I'm pretty excited that there's still a lot of football to watch tomorrow.
Yeah, I think the Big 12 championship game is what most people, most Ducks fans, Pac-12 fans should keep their eyes on, not only because it's probably going to look like a Pac-12 championship game with hopefully a lot of offense. Oklahoma State's defense is really, really tough, and I don't know if Baylor's quarterback is going to be playing. From what I know, he's been banged up. So, yeah, I believe that if Oklahoma State was to beat Baylor in the Big 12 championship game, I think Baylor would go down to the Alamo Bowl, or maybe I think they get into a New Year's 6 kind of area. I think if Baylor wins, Oklahoma State is for sure a New Year's 6 team. And then, Oregon would probably play Oklahoma, which let's just think about that for a second. Oregon against Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl. Like, think about that 2-3 months ago. Oklahoma was a team that most people were saying was, this was their year. They were going to be in the national championship game. And then Oregon comes out, they beat Ohio State. This is their year. They're going to be in the playoff. And now looks like they're both going to be in the Alamo Bowl. And, the head coach in Oklahoma is gone. And, all the rumors with Cristobal. It's crazy how the season has unfolded. Like, it seems like every week it's gotten even crazier than the previous. And then, of course, with the coaching carousel, you got to love it if you're a college football fan. But, if you're an Oregon fan, you're probably biting your nails a bit.
Yeah. And I think that's what's so crazy is I feel like not the fact, I mean, the coaching carousel has been insane, but I feel like it started a little bit earlier than people were expecting. Oh, yeah. And it's just crazy to watch how all the dominoes kind of fall and people make moves after other people make moves. We do have another question though, some more comments. So we want to make sure we try to get to some of those. Question from Anton Z. Should the Ducks start Ty Thompson in the next game? I think this was a question that a lot of people were thinking about during the game, certainly after the game, given how things transpired and Anthony Brown's performance. But personally, I think they should. I mean, do I think it'll happen? I'm not very confident right now that that's going to happen. I think there was another one. Okay, as a comment, if they do, Ty loses his red shirt. I don't think that he does because I was looking at this during the game. At least on GoDucks.com, it shows that he's only played 3 games. So if he plays in that bowl game, and if that were to be his fourth, if the stats that we're seeing here are accurate, then that lines up just right? You get to have Ty play, get some snaps under his belt before they play Georgia next year. I know a lot of people are, thinking ahead. What is this team going to look like? What is the offense going to look like if it is indeed Ty's job next year? If he doesn't have some kind of game reps to develop that experience and adjust to the speed of the game some more. So it looks like his last game, at least on GoDucks, is showing that it was against Colorado on October 30th. So I think it makes sense. I mean, a lot of people were wondering why Thompson didn't come in this game, just given how much the offense was struggling. And I don't know that you had anything to lose by bringing him in against Utah tonight. And I don't know that you have anything to lose by, I think you have, I almost want to say you don't have anything to lose, but you have everything to gain to a degree if you do bring him in. Because there's no guarantee that it's going to go well, right? Getting a good young college quarterback, having them play at a high level when they're really young is so difficult in college football. But when you're just looking ahead and planning forward, obviously the Rose Bowl isn't a possibility now. You still want to win your game. You don't want to just say, oh, hey, who cares? Like, it's the Alamo Bowl. Like, we can do whatever. But I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I don't think I could have put it any better. I do think this is a situation where you have to think about the future. And the Alamo Bowl is not, it's still a game. Obviously, Oregon should plan to win. I'm not, slighting the Alamo Bowl. Like, they did get to a bowl game, 10 wins. They did enough to get to, I would say, a decent bowl game. Obviously, the Rose Bowl is the granddaddy of them all. And then there are other ones like the Cheez-It Bowl and the Jimmy Kimmel whatever bowl. There's all of those that, you don't want to really end up in if you're a Pac-12 team. But the Alamo Bowl, Anthony Brown is a senior. He's been through so much in his career. He doesn't really have much of an NFL draft stock to really boost or lose, I guess. And yeah, you have a quarterback back there who has been patient, credit to him. And he's, likely going to be the future of this Oregon offense. So I definitely think if I'm, Mario Cristobal, Joe Moorhead, I'd definitely consider it more than most weeks because of, everything that was lost with this game, not being able to go to, the Rose Bowl and some crazy scenario with chaos tomorrow, maybe a shot at the college football playoff. Probably wasn't going to happen, but a lot of people thought the chance still remained if Oregon was to beat Utah tonight. But yeah, I think, like you said, there's nothing to lose and everything to gain from putting Ty Thompson in here, getting him on a big stage as well. But do I think they will? Absolutely not. I think they've stuck with Anthony Brown through thick and thin. They're very, I don't want to say stubborn. That's the word that's been in my mind. But I do think they're very loyal to Anthony Brown, whether that's paid off or not. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, and I mean that's another one of the points that I feel like I kind of keep going back to when I'm looking at this season. Obviously the team's battled a tremendous amount of adversity. You look at all the injuries. I think part of me is looking back, wow, this team won 10 games. They beat Ohio State. They won the Pac-12 North. That's all great, but obviously there's those fans and people around the program who support the program who see that there's much more in front of them and that they're not going to be satisfied with that. But part of the result of playing in so many close games, even if they're victories, is you're not getting a lot of these young guys in. If you're blowing out teams like these upper tier college football playoff contenders are on a consistent basis, then maybe we see a Ty Thompson, a Robbie Ashford, a Jay Butterfield coming in to get some reps and get ready for when it is their time, when they are called upon in a bigger role. I don't know if you had anything else there. We had another question, but yeah, I just wanted to see if you had anything there on that one.
Well, not if Oregon goes and gets Spencer Rattler, like a lot of people think they will, which I think is a lot of malarkey. But I'll keep that to myself.
Yeah, that'll be something to follow. Got another question here from Family Berliner. Thanks for the question. Does Oregon's lack of upperclassmen leadership help explain the weak sauce effort tonight? How about you take this one? I've been taking all the first ones. How about you go first, and then I'll hop in after.
Yeah. So, I definitely think that a lot of people that I was seeing today were saying that there was a lot of lack of effort. Oregon didn't show up. They didn't get off the bus. It was embarrassment. Like I saw a lot of that stuff. Same as we saw 13 days ago when this team only put up 7 and got boat raced by Utah before. It's funny that we were talking about how Utah's not 31 points better than Oregon. Well, they only won by 28 this week. So I still feel like Utah is arguably that much better. So I think the defense deserves credit. Now, obviously, they gave up a lot of points and yards and things like that, but I feel like they played with a lot more heart than the offensive unit did throughout the night. Like even late when the game was, well over with, you were still seeing guys, giving it their all on defense. But I do think a lack of upperclassmen leadership with the way that question was worded. This is a very, very young team. And I do think you saw some guys step up as leaders. I think Noah Sewell is one that the coaching staff has talked about even back since the spring, kind of growing as more of a vocal leader, an emotional leader for this team. And then with all the injuries, right, you have guys that probably didn't really expect to play a whole lot this year that have been out there for a huge chunk of the season. So, I definitely think it's an interesting scenario where you just have to play the hand that you're dealt. And I do think a lot of guys did step up in the locker room, Noah Sewell especially. But yeah, this is a very young team. So I do think that this experience specifically is going to do, really good things for them in the locker room, with everybody coming back hopefully next year.
Yeah, you talk about the youth. Obviously, there were guys like Johnny Johnson and Jalen Red who went down, and when you talk to these guys, they're still able to have an impact on motivating the team and helping them out. I think that's something that's maybe a little bit underrated. Obviously, it's not something that we can tangibly assess or evaluate. Right, all we can do is ask the question and watch the game because we're not in there like you were talking about. But yeah, as far as upperclassmen, you think about guys like Mikael Wright and Kavon. It's just weird to be saying that though because those are sophomores, but this is their 3rd year in the program. So I feel like upperclassman is just such a weird term at this point. Like who even knows what an upperclassman is at this point because of the COVID year and how that changed everything. But there's some seniors or just some more experienced guys, I should say. Again, not necessarily seniors, but Alex Forsyth and Verone McKinley were talking after the game, and they weren't deflecting at all. They were just very real about how tough it was. Forsyth was talking about how he was having some communication issues with AB about some of the snaps that we saw tonight. So I don't know. I mean, I think it might have part of the reason that the effort looked bad. I mean, I feel like the effort was there early. I mean, especially if you're looking at defense. I know Herb Street was talking on the broadcast. They were saying, this team just looks flat, for a team that, prides itself on physicality and, responding. We certainly didn't see a lot of that as the game wore on, but what was so tough is I feel like for most of the first quarter, if not the first half, certainly the first quarter, the defense was playing all right. I feel like Utah still had to earn their points. They were being physical. The tackling looked a little bit better, but obviously it got worse, as the night went on, and the middle of the field was still wide open, the whole time. So that was really tough. KT finally got a sack. That was great to see. So it was just hard because I feel like the defense would do well, even if it was, just making them earn the points. But then the offense was just struggling so much that they were back on the field before you knew it. And I feel like as a defense, it's tough when you can force interceptions, those big plays. I was talking about that in the 5 questions leading up to the Utah game story that I wrote on Ducks Digest. I was saying, will the Ducks be able to force a turnover because both teams played so clean in that department last time? And they finally did, and they couldn't do anything with it. I could understand if you're frustrated as a defense, when that happens and you see that, because, you're laying it all on the line, and just to see the offense, they had 3 first downs in the first half. Yep. 3 first downs. You have to come off the field and be like, okay, I guess I'm going out again in 2 seconds.
Well, one of my keys to the game that I wrote about quite passionately in my story was, if Joe Moorhead is indeed in his last game, and even if it's not his last game, even if, this is the Pac-12 championship game, there's a lot on the line. I expected to see a lot more difference in play calling, I guess. I didn't feel like I saw much of anything I didn't see 2 weeks ago in this game. I do think Anthony Brown took more shots down the field in the first game. I also think he had a bit more time in the first game, which surprised me, especially in that first half. That offensive line was not playing well in pass protection. Anthony Brown was under a lot of duress throughout that first half, probably more so than any game I've seen this year. And credit, obviously, to Utah's defense. That defense has gotten better week after week after week, and they came on a mission to play. And they have a lot of ballers out there. So, I do think that, the lack of experience at a lot of different positions, and the injuries, I definitely think that played a huge role, especially look at the linebackers. Think about the middle of the field being open again. Saw it a bit against Oregon State too. So I think once this team gets healthy, some of those things will mix, but we'll get better as well, as more guys get more playing time together. It's just, this Utah team is really, really good. I just didn't expect to see such a similar game, not just in the score, but just the way the game played out. It was so similar from start to finish, really.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Because we were talking about this after we dropped the score predictions piece. That we dropped that on Tuesday, and for you guys that don't read, or if you don't read Ducks Digest, you definitely should check it out. si.com/college/Oregon. Quick plug there. But we have 5 writers who all weigh in, myself included, and Dylan as well, about their score predictions. And I said 28-24 Utah. I don't remember exactly what yours was, Dylan, but I know
31-21. Yeah, I think it was 31-21.
So we both picked Utah.
Yeah.
And I think I'm kind of in the same mindset as you. Am I surprised that Utah won? No. Am I surprised how they won? Absolutely. I thought, with the game, the first game being as bad as it was, I guess I have more faith in the staff, going in to help these guys prepare and, fix some of the things that didn't work so well the first time around. And like you were saying, it looked like we were watching a replay essentially of the game 2 weeks ago. And we were talking about the offensive line at a point I wanted to get back to. We're definitely getting more comments here, but I have the next question kind of queued up. So sorry if you have to wait a little bit for your question. Going to try to get to them as soon as we can. But the offensive line, with Anthony Brown being under pressure, that's obviously going to make things more complicated. His pick was terrible. You see, I think I saw a picture on Twitter of Travis Dye circled on the replay on the screen, just, wide open. Something that's been happening all year. I think just what's so frustrating with Brown and some of these sacks too, I feel like it's either keep your eyes downfield or look at what's happening right in front of you. The good quarterbacks can do both of that, can do both of those things. And on some of the times he's gotten sacked this year, he's just stagnant in the pocket. And it's like, dude, you got to move. Like, you got to realize that I feel like you can tell pretty quickly. I'm not a quarterback, but you can tell relatively quickly, how is the line getting some good protection here? Obviously not your blind side, but that's just what shocks me is he just sits in the pocket and then gets sacked. And it's like, what do you expect to happen? So obviously that was tough. Ducks still without Ryan Walk. I think he might be able to make it back for the bowl game is what Duck fans are hoping for. But I think that's just one of the reasons the frustrations around Brown are so justified, because you shouldn't be seeing these mistakes from a guy this experienced.
Yeah, he's been in college football a long time, and I don't know of many quarterbacks with that much mileage behind them that would make the decision, not just the throw, the decision that he made on the run, running out of bounds, jumping out of bounds, throwing it right to a Utah defender. That was, I don't even know if I would see very many freshmen making that decision in that situation. That was one of the plays, one of the most unbelievable plays I've watched in any game this season. That says a lot, because there have been a lot of crazy moments in college football, Oregon too, but just across college football. That was a bizarre decision, bizarre throw, and just a backbreaker for Oregon, because I believe that was a situation where I think they had pretty decent field position. I'm trying to remember what drive that was. But yeah, that was just an absolute backbreaker for a team trying to get into it, because I think the game was already 3 scores at that point, and it was just like, how do you bounce back from that? Your defense has been on the field for so long, and then you just gift it. And he did that twice. Like, he just gifted it to multiple guys on that pick six the first time, and then the one running out of bounds, looking like Michael Jordan with the jump pass. That was totally bizarre.
That's what makes it so weird, is like, I feel like something that you see inexperienced quarterbacks do is they'll try to extend a play when they're under pressure, and then maybe they'll end up just running out of bounds with it. But he didn't do that. He jumped and tried to and while he was going out of bounds, you guys saw the play, you know how it went down. But it blows my mind. And it's like, you're just making it easier for Utah at that point. You can't, a punt would be better, because you could just, punt it out and then make them earn it, all those other yards that they would have to earn if that didn't happen. But we got another question, and I think it's interesting. So Cameron, thanks for your question. Thoughts on the DC and his usage of the highly touted recruit/talent that we have brought in? Thoughts on losing recruits, players to the transfer portal, and possible Luke Fickell to UO if Mario Cristobal leaves? Yeah, this was, I don't know. This has been one of the biggest questions. This is like kind of like a 3-parter question, so we'll just kind of see where this one takes us, Dylan. But this is one of the most interesting parts about this year's team, I think, because Tim DeRuyter, he came to Oregon, and there was a lot of excitement around him. He was the DC at Cal, for those who don't know, and that was one of the reasons that Cal, I think, was looking a little bit better in recent years, was because their defense had been so improved. And then you look at just how much higher the caliber of talent is at Oregon compared to Cal, and there's reason to be super optimistic. But it's been really hard. It's been super hard to, I feel like, evaluate, how he's fared, or how the Ducks have fared, how he has fared in the first year as DC here in Eugene, because on the one hand you see, clear lapses, really soft coverage from the DBs, all throughout the game tonight. And Utah just kept, they would pound the ball, and then when they wanted to switch it a little bit, they would just hit those slants over the middle because they had the space to, or they would hit the tight ends and receivers on those short out routes because they weren't getting pressed that much. And so you see things like that. And then, the lack of a consistent pass rush. I think the fact that we haven't seen a super consistent pass rusher developed behind KT is definitely a cause for concern. But all the injuries that this team's dealt with, we haven't seen this Oregon team at its full capacity the whole year, except for a half in the very first game of the season. So I think I understand, and I hear they're saying this isn't good enough, we should be better. But I also feel like that is part of the equation. And then when you're looking at Oregon developing into a contender, or pursuing to be that contender, you can just see it's very obvious that they don't have the depth to be in that conversation right now. That's why I think it's going to be a couple more recruiting classes before we see that. You talk about how young this team is, because those really upper echelon teams, they're too deep. There is no drop off to be found. And clearly there's drop off on this year's team. So maybe we can start that question with that.
Yeah, I think there's so much, talent on this team that, even before the injuries happened, it was still a really young team. Like you had some veterans, obviously, that have been around, but you look at that Fresno State starting lineup, there was still a lot of youth that was going to be playing significant snaps on defense specifically. And I think, as you've had injuries at every level, you've just had to see guys get kind of thrown into situations, namely Jeffrey Bossa at linebacker. But credit to him,
He's
obviously,
been great. He's been so great.
Yeah, he did very well at linebacker all year long, and he's only going to grow. But I'm excited to see how he's kind of used next year. But back to the question, I do think that the defensive pass rush is one thing that I was concerned about because, as I've talked about before, like it's shown signs that it can be a very dominant, disruptive pass rush, and there are times where it looks like they can be contained by an average offensive line. Colorado game was one that I was very shocked that they didn't get it, more pass rush against that offensive line that had just fired its offensive line coach. Like that blew my mind how how they weren't able to kind of change the game. But yeah, I do think there is a little bit of concern with developing highly touted recruits early on, but you have to talk about Tim DeRuyter in his first year with the new program. So many young players coming in, true freshmen, people impacted by COVID coming back as a second-year freshman. There's just so many factors with the injuries too. So, I can't really put a whole lot of slack against DeRuyter for not developing a lot of the freshmen in year one, given everything that's happened. I think next year you're going to see a lot about who Tim DeRuyter is as a defensive coach once you kind of start to see people come back healthy, people starting to gel. I think it's a little early to start judging DeRuyter specifically on, development.
Yeah, and then I think just another part of the question here, thoughts on losing recruits. I want to speculate on that right now because we kind of really, I feel like, need to see what happens here between now and, I mean, heck, a couple 48 hours, 24 hours. Like, I feel like something that I was listening to a pod the other day about college football, and it was like people who are covering college football right now kind of have a hard job because whatever they're saying could just be out the window and like not carry any weight, within a matter of seconds, minutes, whatever it is. So, but I can't comment on that to a degree. I feel like one thing in that regard that I'm be really interested in is you look at these past couple or this week, really, teams that aren't playing in conference championship games. What were their staffs doing? They were out on the road recruiting. Oregon wasn't doing that because they were getting ready for this game. So I'm going to be really interested to see which recruits Oregon goes to see for those in-home visits. Obviously, I feel like they're going to see some commits because you want to, show them that you're still recruiting them and, put that effort in and, try to lock some of these guys down before signing day. And then you're also obviously going to want to keep an eye on, we'll see if Cristobal signs a new contract with Oregon because that would really, cement him in, for the future here. So I feel like, yeah, as far as that goes and, transfer portal there, I think that with the way things are going, I think, quarterback has to be the most important position to watch in the transfer portal because even if you have these guys on the roster right now, none of them are proven. So you just need to give yourself more options. So maybe that could be the last part of this question. Then maybe we can check the comments after you give your piece on that, Dylan.
Yeah. The one thing I did want to mention is that look at how much harder the job is going to be for Mario Cristobal and this coaching staff to recruit some of the top talent. Not just because of 2 blowout losses on national TV to Utah, one including in the conference title game, but look at everything that's going on with the program right now. You talk about, a couple commits leaving, namely a wide receiver, Micah Pittman leaving the program, Joe Moorhead possibly leaving, the whole Cristobal thing with Miami. There was a lot that a recruit would need to know right now. That's like, hey, this is a place that I could go and help. And this is a place where I know it's going to look like next year. The job looks, that job sounds really, really hard for the Oregon coaching staff right now. But in terms of the question about the transfer portal, yeah, I do think quarterback is going to be one most people are going to be talking about. Like I mentioned briefly before, the Spencer Rattler thing has been floating around. And I know there's going to be other quarterbacks that probably start entering very soon too. So I'm not for picking up a transfer quarterback, especially not a grad transfer, like a one and done deal.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Yeah, I'm not for that. Even if Ty Thompson got some playing time this year, or Ashford or Butterfield, Butterfield got some playing time, I'm still not really for that, because I do think that those three guys, any of those three guys, are very talented and unproven. So I want to see what these guys can do on the football field for the Ducks, specifically Ty Thompson, because I do think that Ty Thompson should be prioritized as QB1 for Oregon next year. I think getting a grad transfer quarterback sends a message that, to those three quarterbacks, that we're not in a position to win if we start you. Like, we need a veteran with experience. That would be the second year in a row that message is kind of sent, that they don't want to put them out there to, get them experience. Like, I do think that's kind of a red flag if I'm one of those three quarterbacks, if they were to bring in, a Spencer Rattler, or Jake Haener is probably going to UW, but that's the only other quarterback I can think of right now. If they were to bring in someone like that, I just think it sends the wrong message, from their perspective about, their trust in them to lead the program.
Another part of that that's really interesting, I feel like I've kind of had my perspective changed on this a little bit. One of my roommates, Jacob, we were talking earlier about this, and Breck. So shout out to them if they're listening. But we were talking about this conversation around the quarterback situation and looking into next year. So I think I agree with you to a degree on the on not wanting a grad transfer. But I feel like the whole concept around developing a position, especially a quarterback, I feel like it's becoming kind of obsolete to me, because you look at the best teams in college football and they all have game-changing quarterbacks, or crazy skill talent that can make up for any deficiencies at the quarterback position. So I'm kind of leaning more towards the development aspect doesn't matter as much. Just get a good quarterback. Just get a good quarterback on your team and figure out what happens after that. I mean, look at VA, Vernon Adams. I mean, if he didn't get, he was a 1-year rental, and if he doesn't get hurt, maybe the Ducks are, right there in contention for a championship. So I feel like I definitely understand where people are coming from with the whole development thing, because so much of the recruiting pitch is, show me that you had someone come into your program and you got them to the NFL. So in that regard, I understand it, but clearly you can see that quarterback play. I don't want to say just in this game, but throughout this season has limited Oregon. And I'm not saying that that's the reason that they didn't make the playoffs, because obviously they're not going to make the playoffs since they lost tonight. But you can see that was clearly a limiting factor throughout the season, and all the best teams have just absolute game changers for the most part, like I was saying, at quarterback.
Yeah, I think, it comes down to a fit. If there's this, generational talent quarterback that, is on the market, and you just, you see the fit and you think it's an automatic, W for the program, like Vernon Adams was. I wouldn't say he's a generational talent, but, he's definitely a guy you could see the fit right away before he even played a snap. Then, yeah, I get that. But, with the level of talent that Oregon has in this quarterback room right now, I just think they've never had this much quarterback talent behind a starter that I can remember. And obviously there's so much hype around Ty, and, deservedly so. And there's obviously some around Robbie and Jay because of what they've done. And the coaching staff obviously raves about them too. Other, Anthony Brown has as well. So, I do think that if some incredible quarterback comes onto the market, I probably wouldn't say, yeah, let's go get him, but I wouldn't be upset necessarily if they did. I would just feel bad for guys like Ty and Robbie and Jay that, kind of thought they would have a shot at getting, because with the way that the market goes and the way that college football goes with the transfer portal now, if you're a high recruit and you don't really get, your chance right away or within the first couple of years, I mean, they're hitting the transfer portal. Look at what just happened with Quinn Ewers. And I'm not saying
that was crazy.
I'm not saying that like Ty Thompson is that kind of guy that, isn't a patient guy who wants to, I think he's a guy that will stick around, but I have to feel for them if they go after a quarterback for another 1 year rental, because you come into this season thinking, okay, Anthony Brown is the starter, even though Ty Thompson had a shot coming into the year at the starting job. It wasn't announced until the week of the Fresno State game that AB was going to be the starter. You have to think that, well, Anthony Brown, this is his last year. It's my turn to shine next year. I'm sure Robbie and Jay think the same way. And then they get another 1 year guy. It's like, well, what am I doing here if they don't want me here to be the guy? So I do agree with that at some point. Like you want to get guys on the team that will win you football games, but you also recruit those guys to see what they can do to help you, move forward in the program and, move up the ladder, if you will.
Yeah, definitely. We got another question here. Quack Attack 49er. Thanks for the question. Go Niners. If you can see the flag back there, I can't tell there we go. Shout out the Niners. Niners doing all right. I mean, I was very against Jimmy G, but now this season looks semi-salvageable with, maybe we'll mess around and get a wild card spot. But to the question, do we need an entire change of regime to make the most of the talent we recruited from Mario down? Man, that is a tough question. And I feel like it's, one of those huge questions that maybe we're thinking about, in the heat of the moment. I mean, when you're just looking at how things have gone since, Cristobal got to Oregon, it's for the most part been really good. And I think he's raised the floor and the ceiling of this team. You look at the Ohio State win, and I mean, who the heck thought that was possible, heading into that game? I'm sure there were some fans that were out there that were like, oh, I believed the whole time. But I don't think very many people predicted that. But that win, it felt, I mean, I was there in Columbus. I was on the field with the team, when they were celebrating it. And it was just like a glimpse into the vision that Cristobal has for this program. So, and he's for the most part made really solid hires. So I think, and the recruiting has obviously been just awesome. So I feel like I understand why people are skeptical, but you don't want to lose a guy that's recruiting at this level, because it just, like I was saying, it just makes you that much more competitive in any game. I mean, I think that to a degree that was why they won the Ohio State game, was because they had some recruits that were ready to step into bigger roles.
Obviously, you or I are not in the locker room. We're not with the team all the time. But from the outside looking in, you can definitely tell with the players on this team and with this coaching staff that the players have really bought in this year. I think more so than most years. And Cristobal is definitely, the reason for that. I do think that if the Oregon program is to get to the college football playoff in anytime soon, I think Cristobal is the guy that these players will want to do that with. Because a lot of he's entering year 5 next year. A lot of these guys have been recruited by Cristobal, and a lot of these guys have bought into what he told them, throughout their time at Oregon. So I don't think, I know it's heat of the moment, and I know I'm considering it more than I probably would, a couple days from now, but I do think that they should stick with what they've got, especially with Cristobal if he decides to stay, because I do think he is as good of a coach as you're going to have, and coaching these guys specifically with this, with his culture. You talk about it all the time with what the players talk about with the culture that he's built at this program. It's hard to beat that, and you definitely. Like you were talking about with the Ohio State game, after that, the way they were celebrating, the players believe in him. The players love Cristobal. And obviously, the season hasn't shaken out the way that they wanted. And, they're not even in the Rose Bowl. And I'm sure that, that was the floor for this team coming in. But I still think that he is the coach to be, to take this program to the next level. And I think, letting him go and bringing in someone else, most likely from the outside, I think it would just be a step down.
Yeah, I don't think, I understand all the frustrations that, fans are, saying in the comments, or, maybe feeling after this loss, but I just think that he's, I was going to say taking the program to new heights, but I don't know if that's accurate. I mean, the Ohio State one was huge, and who's to say that they get that win if Cristobal, isn't here. So I think that's huge. But oh man, yeah, because they've won a Rose Bowl game, but until they get to the playoffs, I feel like there's always going to be something left to be desired. And I think one thing that a lot of people, should know about, and they probably do know at this point in the season, is that Ohio State win was not indicative of the way the season was going to go. I mean, all the injuries that they battled were pretty insane. I don't know if there was an award for most injured program in the country, they would probably win it. But that's just, that's the hand that you're dealt, and you got to make the most of it. But it just goes to show you how truly difficult it is to get into the playoffs. And then I think we're having another conversation. I mean, what would I wonder what the mood would be of the fans if they get to the playoff and they just get destroyed. Like, what do you think then? Are we still hearing, oh, this is terrible? Like, I can't believe this happened. Like, this isn't where we're supposed to be. It is so incredibly difficult, as we're seeing, to get into the top 4 and then to win a playoff game to get to the national championship. So even though Oregon's good, there's still plenty of work to be done, as we can clearly tell. That's probably the biggest understatement of the day. But, I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, college football, especially with coaches and the way fans, kind of are when it comes to losses like this that are very raw. It's a what have you done for me lately sport. It really is.
Absolutely.
I don't know how much better I can put it than that. And look at, like you said, I don't know if I would particularly say that he's taken them to new heights. I do think that he's brought them back from, kind of the bottom in recent years, because obviously they were 4-8 in 2016. The Willie Taggart era, if you want to call it that, didn't work out at all. And then they bring in Cristobal. And there wasn't a lot of people saying Cristobal is going to change this culture right out of the gate. They really weren't. Nobody really knew, because, his Florida International tenure was not very good. A lot of people didn't know, how long he would stick around. A lot of people didn't know if he'd even be good at, not being good at Florida International, taking the step up to a program like Oregon that has so much expectation, so much standards every year. Nobody knew. And look what he's done. So, like I said, it's a, what have you done for me lately? I do think he deserves more respect from not just the media, but the Oregon fan base as well. I do think that the standard needs to be higher. I've said it, 3 shows in a row now? The standard's got to be higher. It has to be a national championship or bust every single year for this program, really, no matter who the coach is. I think that's been something that's kind of been instilled in the last decade and a half with Oregon and the success that they've had. But it's just, Oregon fans are dying for a national championship, the playoff, something. But I do remember seeing questions about, like, what would you rather have, a Rose Bowl win or a college football playoff appearance and loss? And a lot of people were just saying, a college football playoff loss. But like you said, how would the fan base treat Cristobal and that coaching staff and the players if they just get boat raced by someone like Georgia or, Alabama? So, and then versus if you beat a team like, Michigan or Iowa in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm still of the belief, if I hadn't already said it, but I think, if I'm looking at the program, I would take a playoff appearance, if I was coming at it from the Oregon perspective, because that ultimately means that you've taken a huge step forward. But then this comes back to another point about expansion. What if you make it the playoffs in an expanded playoffs? It doesn't mean as much, because I was listening to Late Kick the other day. I know you guys did a podcast with Josh Pate on the transfer portal, and I feel like he summed that up for me in such a really, clear point. You look at the conference championships that are going to be played tomorrow. Look at the ACC. The ACC is awful this year. You got Pitt and Wake, and you're telling me that you want one of those teams to go to the playoffs? No. Neither of those teams are college football playoff caliber teams. So, I feel like I hear that, and it's just distilled, like just shuts it down for me. So that's why I still feel like, especially now while it's 4 teams, I feel like even if they were to lose, if they make the playoffs, that would be huge. I did have one more question I wanted to bring up or answer here, Dylan, and then we kind of just riff for the last couple of minutes here. We're going to try to go about 5 more minutes. So let me see if I can find that question real quick. Okay, here it is. Question from Matthew Maximus. Thanks for the question. What is the future of the trenches with what we've seen tonight? How about you start this one, Dylan?
Yeah, I do think that you're going to see a lot of the guys on the offensive line coming back. We already know Alex Forsyth is going to come back. George Moore has been around for a long time. We'll see if he comes back. I don't know if he has any eligibility left, but maybe
I don't think he
maybe
does.
I don't think he does either. He's been around since I was, like a sophomore in high school, I think. But yeah, I do think that it's going to be mostly the same up front on the offensive line. There's going to be a lot of talent coming back, a lot of talent coming in. We look at Kelvin Banks and Dave Yulee, Cameron Williams, Michael Wooten. So they're going to have a lot of young guys and, guys that have been around in the last couple of years too, with Jackson Powers Johnson, Dawson Jaramillo. There's going to be a lot of guys coming back. Defensive line, how do you replace Kavon Thibodeau? It's all set in stone that he's off to the NFL. You're just not going to find that production, from one year to the next. It's kind of going to be that, Mariota kind of Heisman, drop off hangover, if you will, with Kavon leaving. So, they've got some guys, but I do think that the defensive line is going to take a bit of a step down. But I am excited for some of the guys that, get that opportunity. I think Dorless, if he stays, I believe he'll stay. I think he's, still a younger guy. So I think he's going to have a huge year next year. I've really liked what I've seen from Popo in terms of his growth, because last year, only really got to see a little bit because of Scott and Folliu and those guys that have been around. But I've liked what I've seen from Popo, especially the last half of the year. Keon, you've kind of seen his importance. Christian Williams, I've liked what I've seen. So, at times you've seen what they can be, but next year I think it's going to be a prove-it year for that defensive line, especially with Kavon leaving for the NFL. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a really young defensive line, inexperienced. But in the middle, I have a little bit more faith coming into next year than I did this year.
So you see the middle on defense, or
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't want to repeat too much of what you said. I mean, yeah, basically everyone's coming back on the offensive line. I would think is pretty fair to say, except for George Moore. So I think it's obviously great to have so many guys back there. Oh yeah, Dave, Chris Peterson, that could be a name to watch for sure. Maybe someone to think about. Sorry, I just saw Dave's comment there about if Mario leaves, about Chris Peterson being a great hire. So that could be something we could dive into in a future show or future stories. But I think that, it's good to have people coming back along the offensive line, really talented offensive line haul in the 2022 recruiting class. Maybe you look at a guy like Kelvin Banks coming in, reports coming out that he's pretty solid with Oregon and is sounding like he's ready to sign. So maybe he slides in. I mean, we see how hard that is, right? You look at Kingsley Suamataia and how, he was super highly touted and now he's over at BYU. And Mirabal has said as much, just as far as getting on the field early, you got to put it on the film. So I think that if one of those guys from 2022 is an instant contributor, then that'd be great. But I'm definitely concerned about the defensive line. It's really, really hard to replace a guy like KT, especially, so soon. I don't think there's a guy on the roster right now. Braden Swinson was a guy that looked like he was doing really well at the beginning of the year and hasn't been making as much of an impact for Oregon. And they really don't have a solidified pass rusher behind him. Dorless is, showing flashes of it, but I don't think they have one right now. So you gotta hit the trail hard and find some defensive line recruits. Look at Cyrus Moss, who was at the game each of these past two games. Came to visit for the Oregon State game, and then was also, I believe he was at the Pac-12 championship game, or there were reports about that. So I'm not sure if that's totally true, but he's from Las Vegas, so you figure that he was at that game. So he's a big name that they're hopefully going to be able to close on. Sounds like USC's getting into the picture there, but you gotta, they need to do more recruiting defensive linemen. Sir Mells and Grayson Halton are big names as well. Ben Roberts, he was a guy who sounded like he's ready to sign as well, but you just can't stop. You just can't stop. Can't stop, won't stop has to be your recruiting mentality on the defensive line, because I think that's where they really need the most work. Wow. Yeah, that was the last question I think we're going to field. I feel like we still didn't even talk that much about the game because we got so many questions, which was awesome. So maybe we'll do or I'll do another live stream tomorrow. But before we get out of here, Dylan, just kind of any final thoughts about tonight, where your head's at, what you saw, college football, anything, games you're looking forward to?
Sheesh. Yeah. Now that you think about it, we really didn't talk that much about the game. And I don't even think that's that bad I don't think that's that bad because, who really wants to talk about that? Even though there was a lot to talk about. I am actually, call me a sicko, if you will, but for some dumb reason, I really cannot wait to watch USC and Cal at 8 o'clock in FS1. It's a game that means nothing. It was postponed. 2 4-7 teams. I just want to see what it looks like for two teams who have basically nothing but like recruiting pride on the line to just go out there and hash it out at 8 o'clock when nobody's watching. Like, I don't know why, but that intrigues the heck out of me. But in terms of, what everybody else is going to be watching, Baylor, Oklahoma State, I talked about it before. That's going to be super exciting. And I would love to see Oklahoma State be a playoff team, given, that nobody really picked them to be anywhere near the playoff, let alone the top of the Big 12. So that's going to be a fun one. Pitt and Wake Forest should be a shootout too. I hope that one's in like the 40s and 50s, just no defense whatsoever. But at the same time, watching an ACC championship game without Clemson, that feels pretty good.
Yeah. So we'll see what I'm excited to see what games we got tomorrow. I mean, that game was definitely going to be a big one. Who knows? Maybe Iowa can do something against Michigan. I don't know. But
Georgia,
it'll be
Bama
fun
too.
Yeah, Georgia Bama is going to be one to watch.
And not talk about that one.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like so many people. It's win or lose. I mean, win or lose, Georgia's in. So I just want the most chaos at this point. I mean, especially since the Ducks, it looks like they're going to the Alamo Bowl. Probably have to wait for the official word. I just want as much chaos as possible because that's what makes college football so much fun. But yeah, we'll have a lot more to talk about here with the Oregon team and maybe talk more about this performance. Really great turnout. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I think this is our best turnout that we've had doing a live show, and it's 11:16 at night out here in Eugene. So
Ducks Digest after dark.
Yeah, maybe. Oh my God, that's a feature right there. Maybe we'll make that a thing. But yeah, we'll have a lot more coverage on this game, as well as whatever happens with the coaching carousel. So make sure to stay tuned to Ducks Digest, si.com/college/Oregon. Make sure to follow both Dylan and I. Wow, it's late. Both Dylan and I on Twitter. Names right there on your screen at mTorres Sports, at DRK Sports News. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the show, and make sure to keep an eye on the YouTube channel. Subscribe if you're watching. Really trying to build the channel, and it's really fun doing these and getting to interact with you guys and seeing where your head's at, answer your questions. We're doing it for the fans. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel, Oregon Football Max Torres. It's free, and it only takes a second. And then go ahead and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on a future show when we're going live. That's about all we have for tonight. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys, and we'll